Good afternoon. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Thursday edition of Conversations with Al McFarlane. Today is Thursday, July 21st, 2022. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along. We titled the Thursday edition of the program Companions. It's an homage to the writing of Ikwe Arma. I've been taken by his analysis, his stories, his books, including The Eloquence of the Scribes, and one called Int Shemsh, and a series of other stories that all have to do with how people create relationships and decide that they, in their experience and in their aspirations, are headed down a path that will strengthen each of them and strengthen community and society, a path that allows for innovation, for discovery, for sharing of information, for valuing every human being and her or his potential, and a path that is guided by the sense of justice. Well, that's kind of the feeling I have in talking to the friends that I have with me on Thursday. And particularly, I'm pleased today to start with two of them. My first cousin, Professor Burnele Powell, who joins us this week from South Carolina. He's the former dean of the law school at University of South Carolina, former dean of the law school at University of Missouri at Kansas City. And I can tell you, I guess, that Burnele was one of the first, second people I met in life. He's 6 months older than me, so he's got that much of a head start on me. And it never narrowed, still ahead of me, but it always has been a pleasure. He's a person that I both adore and admire and respect, and to have conversations with him now, as we both are in our mid-70s, is a wonderful thing. Also with me today is brother Yusef Mgeni, Ndugu Yusef Mgeni, who has been a friend and companion with me since maybe early 70s. I think we started hanging out, Yusef, and doing things together. So with that, welcome to the program. Let's begin. Let me start by saying hello again, brother, cousin Burnele. How you doing?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you, and it's also, I guess, a pleasure to be reminded how old I am. But one of the things that coming together with you on a weekly basis does is to remind me how much of what we talk about involves things that we thought we had worked through and saw individually and as a nation, and that it never goes away. The struggle never stops.
Yusef, come on in. How you doing, man?
Very good, my brother. It's always a pleasure. Hello, Burnele.
Good afternoon.
Yusef, let's start with you, man. We talked before the show about several things that are on your mind. Let's have you throw it out and sort of walk us through a conversation, our feedback, and our look at what's current.
Sure. I found it interesting that earlier this month, Al and Burnele, that Donald Trump called Robin Vos, the Speaker of the Wisconsin Assembly, and pushed him to support a resolution to retract the state's 10 electoral votes for President Biden. So he hasn't given up on Stop the Steal, not one bit. Similarly, the Democrats were attempting to position themselves in opposition to the Republicans in support of the Safety of Marriage Act. And as it turns out, the bill was introduced in the United States House of Representatives, and 47 Republicans supported it. Similarly, in the Senate, 4 Senate Republicans have indicated that they too would support a Respect for Marriage Act, which means that there would be a narrow path for its passage. And it's interesting, it took us 100 years to get an anti-lynching bill, and we've been fighting for the past 10 to eliminate voter suppression. But it appears that respect for marriage may soon become codified and federal law. I also pointed out that William Hart, who was the driving force behind the Delphonics, La 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 means I love you, and Didn't I Blow Your Mind This Time, which won a Grammy, were two of the staples of the Philadelphia sound. And the Delphonics, who sang sort of in very high-pitched sound, falsetto, were a staple in the 1960s and 70s. And I'm sure that you and I and Burnele remember the Delphonics. I'm not certain about how widely memorable they are to the remainder of our audience, but I thought that those were a couple of important milestones. Further, there's been a lot of discussion about a Gallup poll that looked at the support for the media by people in the United States. The media in general was second only to Congress, which came in at 11%. And radio, television, newspapers all scored very low, below 20% in terms of trustworthiness and reliability. And I think that the fact that 6 companies own approximately 85% of all of the radio and television stations and newspapers in this country says a lot about access to news. And many people have been driven to the internet, or to the younger generation, social media, for their news and relevant information. And that's rather tricky, because on YouTube and social media, people don't have to cite their sources like we do, in terms of clearly identifying what our opinions are and clearly citing the sources of the facts that we share with people. So there's a lot happening. It is summer, which is supposed to be a slow news period, but both nationally, both internationally, and seems to be a lot going on that's worth discussing.
Well, let's bring in Kamau King in Atlanta and Dr. Irma McClaurin, who's in North Carolina. And let me acknowledge that Brenda Lyle-Gray is here, but I think she sent me a note last night saying they had a big power outage in New Mexico, and I'm not sure if she's able to bring video. Brenda, can you hear me okay? I see you in the backstage, but
the whole city went out.
Okay. But
you're
It
okay.
came back on about 4 o'clock this morning.
Is that part of the heat wave?
A mess.
Brenda? Is that part of the heat wave down there?
Yeah. It
Wow.
knocked out Comcast, Infinity, the whole bit. Street lights, you name it. It was a mess.
No such thing as
But
climate
anyway,
change,
good
huh?
seeing all of you.
Good to see you, and glad you're here. So I don't know if you're going to be able to bring camera on or not. If you are, great. And if you're not, we hear you, and that's good. Let me go to Kamau and Dr. Irma to respond to both what Yusef and Burnele led with, or to say what's on your mind, what you're thinking about. Dr. Irma, you first, and then Kamau.
I think that, first, hello to everybody, and please stay safe there in New Mexico. The heat is terrible.
Dr.
Yeah, and during this time, just be very careful, okay?
Thank you so much.
We are moving into a very tricky period in American democracy. The idea that there was a separation between church and state has been lost. It seems like it's just gone to the wind. And Americans don't have a clue about how much they're endangering the very foundation and principles of democracy with some of these rulings. We now know that the Supreme Court is not a place that can be objective, that people are pushing their own religious agenda. And I think we're just moving into a very dangerous time at this moment. And it's not until the rights are completely gone that people will wake up, and by then it'll be too late to say what happened. How did this happen? And I think we have to understand that religion has become a politicized weapon. It's about promoting people's ideology, imposing them on people, whether they agree with them or not. I go past a clinic that apparently provides information about abortion. I don't know if they perform it. And I see people out there in this 87-degree heat. And today I saw a Black man out there with signs, to stop abortion. None of these people are in the streets when the police are killing youth. So they're supportive for the fetus, but they're not supportive once those fetuses are born. They're not there to make sure that they get proper care, proper food, that their families have sufficient financial support, being paid livable wages. They don't support childcare, universal childcare. So this is like an agenda that has nothing to do really with human people, with lives of human beings. It has to do with people wanting their perspective to prevail, in the same way that at a point in this country's history, white supremacy prevailed as if it were the law of the day. And we're moving backwards in this country, and I'm very concerned. I also keep my passport ready just in case. And I'm not saying there's a perfect world out there, but there may be a moment where someplace else may be better than this place.
Let me come back to that before we end the program, because I've been watching a lot of videos, my wife Bobby and I, about Americans who are expatriating, I guess, or expats living in different places around the world. And so I'm curious, you brought that up. Would you really consider leaving this country? And it seems like a big jump for most of us. But Kamau, jump in. How you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing fine, Alvin, and good to see you, Burnele, Yusef, sister. Good to see you all. What's on my mind? COVID. I don't believe that the country will ever shut down again. I don't think capitalism is ready to shut down, regardless of how bad things get. And I don't even know whether or not we'll see people wearing masks in mass again. I know I'm wearing, me and my wife are wearing ours, but when we go out again here in Georgia, we see Black people wearing masks and a few whites, but basically whites are not wearing masks here. I'm also concerned about my own mindset. In my men's Bible study last night, I said I'm concerned about China and Russia getting together and coming against the United States. And my brother said it was a man's class, a brotherhood class, and they were saying I was a doomsayer. But as I read my tea leaves, when China tells Pelosi, don't come to Taiwan.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that's serious. And Taiwan is their Ukraine. They believe that it's theirs, and they're building islands in the South China Sea, and I can see them drawing a line in the sand with regard to Taiwan. The other thing that I'm concerned about is Blacks killing Blacks. Here in Georgia, there's been, like across the nation, there's been a lot of more shootings, but mainly it's Blacks killing Blacks. And so those are the things that are top of my mind, trying to keep my head on straight, not being a doomsayer. I don't want to be a doomsayer, but as I read the tea leaves, as Sister Irma said, things are not getting better. I don't see them going back. I mean, they're not only going backwards, they're getting worse. So that's where I am.
Well, Brunel, come back in. And
can I say one other thing?
Oh, go ahead.
I think it may have been as long as 5 years ago that Brunel and I had the conversation with our families with regard to when is the time to relocate. And now I'm hearing that more and more and more.
Where would you relocate to?
Well, we looked at Spain, but right now I'm gonna check out Hawaii. You know, I don't think that they're killing blacks over there the way the blacks are being killed here, and I don't think that the violence is happening in Hawaii. Now, it is a very expensive place to be, but I like Hawaii because it's, you know, still American soil. They speak English. Health insurance is good, you know.
Irma, where would you go? What are your choices, your options?
Well, I think probably where I feel most at home, ironically, is in Belize, where I did my field work. I still have many friends there from 25 years ago when I started doing research there. People think I'm Belizean American anyway. It's not a perfect place. It doesn't have the same kinds of resources. And a lot of the violence and some of the dangerous behavior that Kamau talked about is also being exported there, but it's still relatively a place where I feel most comfortable because the people look like me. You know, Europe is great, but I know that my experience as an expat in a European country is very different from that of the native-born blacks who live there. And I think we saw that after George Floyd's, the protest was also, you know, in Paris, where police were killing Black youth there. So I'm not sure. While I think being an expat, Black American expat, if you're an artist, it puts you in a certain kind of privileged category. And I think we have to be real careful. I would like to just be with the folk. And right now, Belize, the Virgin Islands, you know, these are places where I've visited. I feel comfortable. I actually have land in Belize. And, you know, maybe it's time to go build that Lee house, as they say.
Let me, before I bring you back in, Burnele, introduce another relative of mine, Philip McFarlane, who's touring the U.S. now. His band is called Earth Cry. It's a roots reggae band. But Philip and I, will be the youngest person on the call. So, Philip, I'm addressing you as a person who's got a certain investment in the future that we have and have had, but you're looking at it with a longer lens. Your future's ahead of you. I had two questions. One is to, first of all, welcome you, Philip, say hello to you. Bring him on camera, if you would, Bosch. Or let's see, maybe I can do it. Let's see. Yeah, let me try to do it. Oh, I don't see you. Is he frozen there or not? Yeah, I don't see him. He'll come back. He's there. But I want to ask Philip when we get him back to talk about how African people, or Jamaican in this case, how people of color look at America. What's his impression as a person not born here, with family here, and now touring? What's his impression of the news that we're talking about? How does it affect him, and how does it affect his world out of Jamaica and the world he sees as an artist traveling throughout the Caribbean and throughout America, through South America and Europe? But so till we get him back, Burnele, come back in if you would and respond. And I was particularly interested in your comments about the question that Kamau raised about moving away, and other comments as well.
I commented earlier that I'm struck by how much how often I am now having conversations that I used to have in the 60s and 70s. And at that time was fully comfortable with the idea that the nation was moving forward. And now, 50 years later, I'm highly concerned that the nation is moving backwards. I haven't been able to come to a conclusion that is definitive in terms of what direction we're moving, or at least how fast we're moving backwards, or whether it's a backward move that's irreversible. But I am at the point where I am concerned. Just one personal note. I decided that I wanted to be a lawyer when I was about 8 years of age. And I have never wanted to be anything other than a lawyer, as passionately and as intimately as I relate to the notion of being a lawyer. But when I heard Dr. Irma speaking about the Supreme Court, viewing it as a captured institution, I know that one of the things that I'm supposed to do, or at least is one of the things that's expected of me as a lawyer, is that I step forward and say, well, no, the court is simply at one of those points in which conservative opinions are dominating. But this will pass, and that the court has not really reduced itself to simply another politicized branch of government. But I will tell you, I can't say that with any confidence today. We have a court which has a majority that came about as a result of a political movement to put a majority or to make a majority on the court that was committed to certain political doctrines, chief among which was the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and less known, one of the priorities was to make sure that government was unable to regulate big business, that government would not put in boundaries with respect to the way in which capitalism operates in our society. Those are both political points of view. And it's not simply a situation in which a little bit of concern is being expressed by the court. The court, in its Dobbs opinion involving Roe v. Wade, and in the West Virginia versus EPA case, took radically different positions than it had in recent years. And in both instances, basically declared that we want a result in this country where only the most, I guess, energetic effort on the part of the society will overturn the positions that we are announcing. That is ruled by the court rather than by the political branches, and it is upsetting, disturbing, and certainly has me, along with all of you, asking, how safe are we here? How long must we wait for clarity? And am I at risk of waiting too long for that clarity?
Now, can I ask Burnele a question real quick?
Go ahead, Brenda.
Burnele, one of my students asked me a question early this morning, and it really has bothered me, and I don't know how to answer it, because he said, B. Gray, how can these people, after January 6th and all of the information that has come out, how can they back these people, and how can they back Trump? And I mean, he came from his heart. He said, everything is laid out, and it's ugly, and it's a lie, and it's corrupt, but still they are backing him. And I don't understand it. I couldn't give an answer. It's still a two-party system, but still, and maybe we'll have more answers tonight with the
Brenda,
hearings.
could I try and respond to that? Because
please, Dr. Irma, I would love to hear it.
It's not going to be a good answer in the sense
That's
that
okay.
In the sense that what we have here is a kind of tension between facts and beliefs. Beliefs are not facts, and they can stand even in the face of empirical evidence to the contrary. These people believe in a certain direction for this country. I have been saying for almost a decade that this is a moment, and Trump sort of epitomized what I call the reclamation of whiteness, or the reclamation of white supremacy. And there is an attempt, a deliberate attempt, that is using the structure of this country to try and reinstitute ideas and beliefs that prevailed decades and hundreds of years ago. They want to put us, brown and black people, quote unquote, in our place. They want to reclaim the privilege that they have never earned, but they feel absolutely entitled to by virtue of their white skin. And so we continue to want to look for logic, but culture is not logic. Beliefs have nothing to do with logic. They have to do with whether you embrace them or not. Do you believe in God or do you not? Do you believe, in abortion or do you not? And those are about beliefs. They're not about facts in terms of, what are the implications of if someone does not have an abortion, if they are raped or incest. It has nothing to do with those factual things. It has to do with beliefs. And we have a part of this country where they are emboldened and passionate about making sure that their beliefs prevail. And they have now stacked the Supreme Court to make those beliefs become reality.
Let me thank Timothy Gerba, who told us that he's monitoring the program from Liberia. Thank you, Timothy. And tell your friends, anybody else that's around the world, tell us where you are. We'd like to know. And thank you for watching. So, Burnele, you want to respond? And then Yusef, come in.
I want to at least offer a slightly different perspective. I do not disagree with the psychological analysis that's been offered, the difference between beliefs and facts. But I also think that there is a need for historical perspective. And what I would ask is that we all keep in mind that at the founding of this country, 1/3 of the people were in rebellion. 1/3 of the people basically were saying, hey, we can sit this one out. We don't really have anything at stake. All we want to do is to go forward with our daily lives. And 1/3 of the people were royalists and opposed independence on the part of the country. We've never really moved much from that breakdown. And today, what we see is a situation in which roughly, for instance, 60+% of the population believes in the basic holding of Roe v. Wade. About 80%, close to 80% of the population believes that there ought to at least be abortion available in some instances, rape and incest. But there is a very strong ideologically oriented base that has been relentless over the last 50 years. And I quite frankly think we're always going to have them with us. Before I began making decisions about whether it's time to leave the country, what I want to know is how committed that 1/3 is that has always fought for the expansion of liberty in this country. And I want to know which way that 1/3 that thinks that they don't really have anything involved one way or another and can sit on the sideline and basically entertain themselves on the internet, how they are going to vote. It's only at that point that I think that we'll have a true reading of where the country is going.
Brunel, let me say that my memory tells me that we may have had a conversation back in 11th grade or 10th grade in Kansas City. I'm trying to remember something, but us talking about at that time, the threat to the world was the potential for Russian domination. We were all organized from around 3rd or 4th grade on to be ready for the big attack, the missile attack, and trained to get under our desk or to fear. And the question we had in our conversations then was, how different would the world be if the Soviet Union, if Russia was in fact in control of the United States? I think I had this conversation with you, would have been maybe in 1964 or 63, maybe 61, I'm not sure. And I think one of us said that when you look at it, what would be different for Black people? Whether Russian or whether Irish or whether Italian or British or German, would our lives be materially different under one set of white supremacists, if we could call them that, versus another? Is that a conversation we had? Is it one that's relevant for today?
So are you suggesting, Al, and believe it or not, my phone overheated and crashed, and so it had to cool off. So I don't know if it's the heat or what, but, you know, are we exchanging one set of sheets for a different one? You know, does white supremacy in Russia sound better? I think that question was already answered, you know, in the 1920s when I can't remember her name. She was a very good friend of Langston Hughes, but she also worked with Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston on Mulebone. And she took a group of people to film in Russia. And they were going to go there and make this film that was about Black people and the proletariat, and discovered that racism in Russian sounds just as bad as it does in English. You know, so exchanging one set of people who believe in racial superiority for what our current state is, at least this one we've worked with, we know it better. And I think we just have to keep plugging away at it. Even if I leave, I'm never going to give up my pen and keep writing. I'm never going to try and lose hope. But I tell you, we are in dangerous times. And the people who need to wake up are not Black people. It's white people who really need to do a reality check, because they're also going to be in trouble.
Well, Brunel, I was thinking about the 1/3 you said. What are they going to do? The ones that profess a progressive ideology and profess to be defenders of human liberty, of human development, of the democratic principle. And so that's the reason I raised the memory. You know,
your memory is better than mine, but I hope that I was sophisticated enough to say that authoritarianism is largely colorblind. Authoritarianism is in favor of authority for whoever has the power and whoever has the most power. Just think, as recently as 3 years ago, the media was full of discussions about the fact that Putin was going to be the savior of the white race, that he was the last white Christian who had power, who was going to protect Christians throughout the world, at least white Christians, and the right in this country. We're singing his praises and talking about what a great guy he was. And when I say the whites, I mean from the White House downward, all through fundamental Christianity in this country. We're espousing this nonsense. But authoritarianism doesn't care what color you are. What it cares about is who has the power, and it wants the power for itself. So I would hope that my answer back then was that the situation of Black people under an authoritarian regime was going to be horrible, that it was going to be unacceptable, and that the one thing that I know about this country is that the Black people in this country, having been brought here in slavery, having had 300 years in this country, having built themselves up in this country, are still the most successful group of Black people the world has ever known as a collective. And I'm not willing to give that up easily.
Yusef?
Well, in terms of expatriation, my vote is for Cuba. Love the music, love the people, would welcome the opportunity to make a small contribution there. In terms of the Supreme Court, I concur with Burnele that they've broken, the trust of 2/3 to 3/4 of the people in this country on a number of issues. But not only are they intent, and the Federalist Society and others on the right in putting their candidates forward, they're also equally as intent on preventing any nominees whose views may be broader or more open-minded or different from their own. In fact, I consider myself among those who believe that the right in this country have stolen 2 seats on the Supreme Court, one from Barack Obama and one from Joe Biden. So there appears to be no limit to the depths or to the legal lengths that they will go to see that their opinion prevails legally, politically, religiously, and ideologically. So we're in for a rough time given the supermajority that they have of 6-3 on the Supreme Court.
Yusef, I sent you an email regarding that theme that came out of Dr. Bravada Akinsanya's Healing Circle last Friday, and it was the consequences of not knowing. And I added the consequences of not doing anything.
True.
What is it that we can do to get Black people to understand the critical consequences of not knowing and not voting?
Before you answer, I've got my cousin, Phil McFarlane. He's got a signal issue, so he might get kicked off again. But Phil, if you hear us, jump in the conversation.
Looking like a McFarlane.
Can you hear us, Phil?
He's frozen again.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm hearing you guys now.
He sent me a text saying that there's bandwidth issues. He keeps getting dropped out. Well, let's keep trying, Phil. And if we can get you when we want to, I want to let people know that he's touring and he'll be performing here in Minneapolis. The band is called Earth Cry. And maybe, Vosh, if you can open up our paper, you look at one of the pages, you see an advertisement in it promoting Phil's band's appearance in Minneapolis next week. So Phil has fans here and around the country. And again, the band is a roots rock reggae band. I think you can zoom into that one ad that says Earth Cry. So they're going to be in Minneapolis on July 29th at a place called the Ice House in South Minneapolis. That's Phil McFarlane. So we come from, guys, a musical family, Phil being the leader of one branch. You all know Wayne had been the pioneer in my personal family. And this past week or so, I've been working with my brother Micah. Micah is the one that has created a business with partners in Morelos, Mexico, to bring a new product to market. The product is called Rebel Avila. It's like tequila, but it's not tequila because it's not made in Jalisco. It's like champagne has to be made in in a place where they in Champagne in France. So,
But it is muy suavemente. It is very
so
smooth.
very smooth. Okay, thank you.
Suavemente.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, let me try and respond to Brenda's question. I
I'm
think,
sorry, Dr. Irma, you're responding to, I mean,
you
but
know,
these are
but
students, these are young
these,
people
but
asking.
it's, you know, I'm in touch with a young man who changed careers to become a teacher, and I send him materials about Insight News and articles and things like that. I think we have to go back to being a village that raises children. We cannot rely on just parents alone, nor can we trust schools that, even if they want to provide alternative explanations and views, or views that bring the subaltern, you know, the minority view perspective into focus, their hands are being tied by legislation that says you can't do this and you can't teach that. I think we have to go back to the Saturday schools. My father worked at a synagogue for over 30 years. They always had Jewish school. You know, the kids would go there from the time they were young to learn information about their history and culture alongside what they
You
were being taught
always
in public
mention
school.
freedom schools,
Yet
and we
freedom
had
schools.
those.
Yes. And I think we have to resurrect those, just as we have to make sure that we find ways to endow and support the Black press. You know, it's vital at this moment in time when we cannot trust what is being fed to kids in school under the standard curriculum. So I think we have to find ways. I think getting the newspaper out to people, finding ways to get it out across the country, across the globe, so that we're not alone in this struggle. But we're engaged in a struggle, and it's a struggle
It's
for
a
truth,
fight.
you know, and democracy and liberty and justice.
We need to get the newspapers in schools too, somehow,
You
so that those students can introduce it to their parents, and we begin to have this chain of information. Because, I mean, we've had several guests last week, and that was the whole thing. We've got to educate people. What are the consequences when we sit up on November 8th and they've taken over the House and the Senate, and we're saying, duh? Because all of our rights beside Roe versus Wade are just slowly inching and going away.
Yusef talked about media. We talked in advance about the Black News Channel. Give us an update on what's happened there, and let's have a discussion about how we know, how we learn, how we communicate our vision, our value, how we create our story, and how technology may allow us to do things that we couldn't do, where things that were suppressed by the power of a social network that existed in part to suppress us to maintain its own advantage. But Yusef, what do you think?
Yeah, let me just inform Burnele that there's a person in the comments section who wants to know if she's a relative of yours, Gail Venable Tyler, and you might want to look into that. One of the other concerns, Al, is what are we doing for the significant number of Black men and women who are either incarcerated or who are under the control of the corrections and criminal justice system in this country? Because I'm a firm believer that if we don't give a damn about them while they're incarcerated, they're not going to give a damn about us when they return to our communities, because they're not going to what's the name of that suburb, Kamau in Atlanta, where they have all those
Alpharetta, Buckhead. Buckhead.
Yeah, they're not going to Buckhead or to Minnetonka when they're released. They're coming right back to the African American community. And, the media is not going into those institutions. The Black media needs to be going into those institutions. We used to say that when you surrender control of your image, you're captured. And unfortunately, the only time that we make the majority media is for a no-hitter or a shootout. And Al, you and I discussed the fact that over the July 4th weekend, that more black people were killed on the south side of Chicago than white people were killed in Highland Park, 14 miles north of the Loop. And there was not a squeak of that either in the national or in the local news. 71 people got shot over the 4th of July weekend in Chicago. And we talked earlier about the black on black violence. Black people kill most black people, white people kill most white people. And we really have a role in terms of addressing the tremendous increase that Kamau talked about at the beginning of the program of black on black crime, violence, murder, rape, abuse within and outside families and among total strangers in our community. And the sad fact is that it's over the most insignificant stuff, like somebody making a comment on social media about somebody else or their girlfriend, then it has to be settled with gunplay. That's absolutely ridiculous. But our kids spend more time in front of a TV set before they enter kindergarten than they will spend earning a 4-year college degree. And we become so dependent on the majority culture media that we wouldn't even know where to begin to find information that is relevant to us politically, economically, financially, spiritually, religiously, that is out there in the Ethernet or in the community. And many people consider books to be dangerous instruments. I mean, that form of publication is rapidly declining and may be dead, not just in our lifetimes, but within the next 2 decades. You might not be able to purchase a book. You'll either have to download it or upload it or tweak it or tweet it or do something with it, but you won't be able to pick it up, put it in your hands and curl up in front of the fireplace or under a candle and some nice incense and read it to yourself or to other members of your family. So
what do we do about that?
There's a real information leak in our community where the information is not being shared or disseminated, and it's being lost.
What do we
But
do?
Yusef, Al asks the question all the time. What is the solution?
There is no solution.
Yeah, there's
There
the
has to be, Burnele. It was the solution when we grew up.
There's no magic bullet, Brenda, but I think there are many solutions.
Yes, there is no solution in the sense that there is something singular that we can do. There are multiple things that need to be done. One of the things that I had wanted to say when the question of black on black violence was raised, Yusef has I think, pinpointed the various elements that are involved. Blacks kill blacks, whites kill whites. What I noted though was that we didn't include that poor people kill poor people.
True.
That there is a class-based, economic-based, social milieu-based aspect to violence too, and we tend to overlook that.
That's largely now.
And what that means is that the patterns of violence that we see in the Black community, they're replicated throughout all communities among poor people.
That's largely a result of the policy of containment through housing, through policing, through education, and through other economic factors in our community. They don't have access to rich people.
You're absolutely right about that. But my point is that we cannot view this as a Black problem. It is also an economic problem and a social problem.
Educational, geographic, political.
When you look into socially disadvantaged groups of any kind around the country, what you see is violence that is intra-society, intra-social.
Vash, bring up the front page or the page 3 story on Allen Media Group buys Black News Channel. This is a story that's in our upcoming edition, and it says most of us are familiar with Byron Allen. He's the comedian who turned entrepreneur, who was in a running battle with Comcast for a number of years, and I think prevailed and got access that he was looking for that was being ignored. But we're reporting in Monday's paper, well, on social media yesterday and day before, there was a post-mortem. I think Roland Martin in particular talked about what happened, that the Black News Channel met its demise. And the backstory is that this is a company that was created, funded by the Jacksonville Jaguars owner. His name is Shad Khan, who had invested $100 million in the creation of this venture in 2020. It shut down in March. Byron Allen, who already owns the Allen Media Group, is buying the property now for $11 million through a bankruptcy court in Tallahassee, Florida, and signed off on the sale just in the past couple of days. And that means that through Black News Channel, which reaches about 45 million homes, through companies like Comcast and Charter and DirecTV, Allen is saying his company can grow that distribution to about 80 million homes in the next 6 months. And he's also saying that, I'm saying that he has the advantage of being a trench warrior, trench fighter, working inside successfully, it seems, the media enterprise arena. He owns not only the Weather Channel, but 27 local TV stations in 21 markets, and he owns digital brands like The Griot and Comedy TV. Yusef and all of you, what is the opportunity? What is the possibility? How does a business like that succeed? How do businesses in general that we create succeed? And what's the environment right now for the emergence of our brand as entrepreneurs? Yusef, you first, if you would.
Well, I can remember back in the 1970s when BET started, that the brother who started it was going to the library and checking out Little Rascals movies and showing them on BET, because it was carried in 400 markets on cable TV, and he was getting 15 or 20 cents a month from each of the homes in those 400 markets, which allowed him to use stair-step financing and gradually build that market largely on the basis of Michael Jackson videos and other recording stars. I think that distribution is key, Al, in terms of having an audience to begin with, and then developing and growing that audience. One of the criticisms that Roland Martin made was that the brother from the Jaguars who started the Black News Channel wanted to compete immediately with CNN and some of the other national media outlets. And he had 250 people in the newsroom, but he wasn't drawing the revenue to be able to sustain the platform that he was aiming for. Plus, he started it right at the beginning of the pandemic, which was, unfortunate timing and presented its own set of difficulties. It is important for us to support, to subscribe, to share. It used to be that the Black Barbershop with, the copy of Jet magazine that had Emmett Till's picture on the cover was on the reading table in Leroy Gardner's barbershop in St. Paul, Minnesota for 18 years. Okay. And he swore he would stab anybody who tried to take it out of there or come after him with his straight razor. And, that's where a lot of people got their information because they were too poor to be able to subscribe. And it was prior to, the satellite, cable, electronic age of the media. And what we get through the majority culture media, as I said earlier, is a no-hitter or a shootout. And you either have to go to the library, you have to purchase books, you have to go to hear lectures or talk to people, get books from other people that influence them in order to stay in the know with contemporary information. So what it requires is support from people who are open-minded, not just because the people who produce it are Black, but because the information is useful, it's valuable, and it will improve people's quality of life. But
Kamau, what do you think?
Doesn't matter who's doing it.
Kamau and Irma, what do you all think?
I'm thinking that I can't I can't disagree with the economic analysis. I try to stay out of that lane. But I do think that one thing that works even in that economic sphere will work in any other sphere, and that is each of us has got to emphasize a lifestyle that puts being rational and being critical at the very top of what it is that we do. We ought to be approaching the world in a manner that insists upon rationality and critical analysis with respect to everything that is going on. And we ought to marry that rationality and that commitment to being critical to our activism. And that activism ought to be in all spheres all the time. And we can do that on an individual basis, and we can urge each and every one of our brothers and our sisters and our neighbors in that direction. And we've got to, as part of that process, say to them, there may be a lot of things that are going on in this world, but they are not going to pay the dividends that we need 10, 15, 20 years from now. And they're not going to give us what we want unless we've been rational and critical and active.
What does that mean to you, Kamau? What does it mean to you to have an approach, a policy, a strategy, a training of ourselves, our minds, and our community around a protocol of being rational and being critical, a way of life?
Well, Alvy, it's I ask myself the question: what can I do? What can Kamau King do to make a difference? And the things that I try to spend my time with nowadays is basically trying to clean up my community, and that's picking up trash. They'll see me down the streets picking up trash. And last week I went to the principal at the elementary school as a result of your program last week, and volunteered to read to elementary school children, and she's assigned me a couple of classes. So I know it doesn't sound like much, but that's what is rational to me. That's what Kamau King can do, and try to stay informed. Try to read the tea leaves.
But Kamau, you remember we were raised with that. Al and I talk about Miss Jessie's barbershop, and remember it was intergenerational. There was a dad that would go in there and have a haircut and bring the son, and you had all of these conversations. And even as a young lady, I would go and sit with my father, and I'd learn more from those elders than I would in a textbook, except for our teachers at D.A. Holmes. But we had that. And, and I'm doing the same. I'm teaching a writing class on Saturday mornings. And I'm really, no matter what's going on in my life, I love those kids. And they're just enthused.
Go ahead, Burnele.
So
just want to say that I come directly out of the barbershop culture.
Oh,
My father was a barber.
I
He
know.
went on to own a barbershop. And
Yep.
of course, I was brought in at an early age to sweep up the hairs and work the barbershop and help support it.
We
One
all
of the things
remember
that I
Miss
learned
Jessie.
about that culture was that everything was up for discussion. And I thought that that was good. One of the other things that I learned about that culture, though, was that there were many who were involved in the discussions who simply wanted to be followed because they were capable of speaking, not because they had anything that was that productive to contribute. And the last thing they wanted was for a contribution by a 8 to 10-year-old.
That's for sure.
To the conversation.
I learned to keep my mouth shut. That's for sure.
But having been introduced to the world of ideas in that environment, it has been helpful to me over the years.
That's true. It established a foundation for
And
us.
we need more of those kinds of environments where
Yep.
people are actually exchanging views and being asked to defend those views and being asked to be brave enough to speak out, even when it is quite evident that the majority does not want to hear you.
Let me ask Irma to close us out today. But before I do, Irma, I wanted to just say that you sparked another memory, Burnele, and that is me and you with push brooms in your dad's barbershop. And I specifically remember the conversation we had about Stevie Wonder. And he had just launched the song, what's the song called? Fingertips, right?
Fingertips, yes.
And we were sweeping, and the song was on the
American
radio,
Bandstand.
and you
Clap
gave it
your hands.
you gave it the
so
Burnele Powell analysis about how important this was, how great it was. So it was cool. It's a good memory.
And we haven't forgotten American Bandstand and him introducing it.
Irma, close us out because I want you to explore a couple of ideas. One of the things I love about your work and your passion is the notion of archiving. An archivist, you have the Irma McClaurin archives at University of Massachusetts Amherst. But as an anthropologist, you are committed to the life of documentation, of gathering and researching and cataloging and preserving the stories, the data. And so in closing, talk about, I'm raising the question, hearing Burnele in my ear about coming up with a system among us and between us that is always led by critical thinking. And what was the other thing, Burnele? Critical thinking and rational, being rational and critical. And so if we can develop protocols that lead us and reflect us operating with that as the undergirding of everything we do everywhere. Part of the need is to document and to defend that is the character of the people, of the population, of the culture. What do you think about that? What's the role of the anthropologist, and what's the role of our culture in creating that kind of sustainable identity that will move us into a future in which we win?
I think that Burnele's not going to be happy with me, but I think at some point you have to let go of rationality because it's not all that it's cut out to be. For me, it is critical and creativity, because at some point it is Einstein's theory of insanity. You keep doing the same thing because it's rational and expecting different outcomes.
That's not what Einstein said.
I'm just arguing about people who believe that logic and rationality, which is a Western concept, is the only route. And I'm simply arguing that for me, there's a different route, and it's stepping outside of that box and that rationality. And for me, I just wanted to say that, one, going back to Byron Allen, how is the NNPA supporting what he's doing? How do we come together in collaboration and community to make sure that the Black newspapers don't fail and that they can build on the platform that he's building? How do we pass that on? I do it by taking young writers, like I'm sending Al people to send him articles all the time from all over the world about all kinds of topics. And I am supporting them to have access to opportunities when I can. So I'm an alum of the Op-Ed Project. And when I find someone who's passionate about writing, I send them a note and say, you need to give them a scholarship. I think we need to figure out how do we continue to build and grow in our own backyards, the youth of today for tomorrow. And, whatever we can do, I'm supporting that.
And Dr. Irma, I wanted to thank you for all the recommendations you made to Dolores Works and to Stephen, how do you pronounce it? Nakowski or whatever. Those were great recommendations. And it was the combining of academics and enrichment. And it was great. And I really appreciated it and loved writing about it.
We can take an extra minute. Let's go around one more time and close up. Burnele, you were responding to Irma. I love the exchange. So
I simply wanted to say that ultimately, Dr. Irma sounds quite rational to me, and I'm glad I have her in my camp.
That's good. What are you guys reading? Who's reading what? Yusef, what you reading? Anything?
I'm reading 5 or 6 books, Al, but I just want to say 2 things are foremost in terms of our critical thinking and our view of the world. One is, what is the value added benefit? And 2 is, who are the intended beneficiaries? And I ask myself those questions about any endeavor that I might be attracted to or I might be invited to participate in. What is the value added benefit? And who are the intended beneficiaries? Okay, and those 2 questions will tell you everything that you need to know, whether it's a book, whether it's a person, whether it's a movement, whether it's a volunteer opportunity, whether it's a critical issue in our community. And I try to keep those at the forefront. And I think when I do that, I never go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Kamau, what you reading?
What am I reading? I'm still reading The Unfinished March. Unfinished March by Eric Holder.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for those 2 questions, Yusef, because I feel as though reading to these young people adds value.
It's great.
Both to them and to me.
Yeah.
I get a chance to learn some new things, and they do too.
And also who the intended beneficiaries are.
Right.
Up front.
Right.
Burnele, go ahead, and Brenda, you're next.
I went back and picked up a book that was recommended to me that had been on my list of books that I should read. It's called Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankel, and it is a book written by a Holocaust survivor, and he uses the Holocaust experience as a foundation for discussing the broad question of how does one find value in life.
More importantly, he developed a theory of counseling that he created in the camp that he then took outside, which is about resilience. Like, how do people, maintain resilience in the face of tremendous adversity? I would say that for myself, I'm always trying to figure out how to pass it on. So right now, Al, I'm reading your foreword to my book of columns, and I'm trying to get that finished as soon as possible. And it was your email where you said my essays were a bit like Coltrane, and I loved it. So I'm using that.
Congratulations. That's quite a compliment.
Yeah. I was like really touched. So I'm hoping to get that finished. That's my goal by the end of this summer.
Awesome. Brenda,
and then there's a wonderful book called Choreographing the Folk, and it's about Zora Neale Hurston, who took the dance form and who also was a documentarian. And this person has looked at, this is a dance person looking at the plays that she put on and how she used folk culture and looking at the way in which she talked about it and preserved it through her plays and stuff. And it's because of that she did that, we understood how people could be working in the most adverse conditions of turpentine camps and citrus camps, probably dying from the fumes of what they were collecting, and then go home and pull out their guitar and just be creative, even in the midst of what was extreme poverty and harsh conditions. So that is something that I'm enjoying.
Was Lorraine Hansberry the name you were looking for?
No, choreographing the folk, Zora Neale Hurston. This is a book about Zora. Yeah, earlier.
Yeah, was it Lorraine Hansberry? Wasn't her?
No.
Okay.
Brenda, what you reading?
No, it was Harriet. She was one of the Harlem Renaissance writers. And her daughter has put together a collection of letters between her and her husband and Langston Hughes, and it'll come back to me. I want to say Harriet, but I can't remember the last name. But she was with the Harlem Renaissance so she predates Lorraine Hansberry.
Okay.
Brenda?
I am rereading my own book. I wrote it, but I never read it all the way through after I wrote it. So I'm in the chapter right now on gratitude, and it really is like I said, did I read this? I'm also working through the book called Restorative Justice, which is in the English language and arts classroom. And it's really a powerful book that I had on the list for teachers to read for the summer. It's a real good book because, like Dolores Henderson said, and Dr. Irma McClaurin, we have to start doing things differently. And we have to start thinking differently about how we're teaching our children and what's important to them. So anyway, I just love Thursdays and seeing my classmates and Yusef. It's been great. It's always great.
Great to see you too, dear.
And we have some pictures for you. Vash and I have some pictures, and they'll spring when he's ready, but it takes us all the way back. And I was hoping Burnele and Kamau would be here, but we didn't get a chance to do it today, but we will in a couple weeks.
Go ahead, Burnele.
Al, I just want to say we're 11 days plus waiting for the Secret Service guy who said that he would testify under oath that the testimony given by Hutchison was flawed, was not correct. I'm still waiting.
Right, I'm not holding my breath.
Well, listen, guys, thank you all. Great conversation. We'll see you next week.
Love
Take care.
it.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Stay safe.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Have a good one.